I was watching this docuseries. I mean, I cried at least twice every episode. It just hit close to home. I felt encouraged, challenged, joy, invited to dream bigger and lead better. And I kept wanting to jump up out of my chair and say, yes, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. And if you haven't guessed by now, the docuseries that I'm talking about, that I would dare say shifted the way I think about leadership and creativity was Welcome to Badass Softie, a podcast for leaders who are unapologetically ambitious and want to lead with heart because you're allowed to chase big goals without losing what makes you human. I'm your host, Dr. JJ Peterson, and if you haven't guessed by now, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, the docuseries that I'm talking about was Taylor Swift's The End of an Era. Yes, that one on Disney Plus, for which I am receiving exactly zero sponsorship dollars. I'm not promoting this for anything other than it genuinely, I don't want to say rocked my world, but like opened me up. And before you roll your eyes and assume that this is some kind of clickbait because it's Taylor Swift, and I know some of you are going to think that because, as Miss Swift herself has reminded us, haters are going to hate. I should tell you this episode almost didn't happen. Like, I hesitated. I was like, I don't want to be cliche. I don't want to be cheesy. I don't want to fall into this rut of using Taylor Swift to get publicity, and that's not what I'm doing. I kind of came to a place where I was like, eventually I'm like, I don't care. I actually loved this docuseries so much, and it brought me so much joy and inspiration. I mean, it genuinely inspired me deeply. And here's why I'm sharing it with you. After watching this docuseries, it is undeniable to me that Taylor Swift is a badass softie. So even though it feels a little cringy maybe or weird to be talking about the leadership lessons that I learned from Taylor Swift era's docuseries, I'm going to shake it off because that's what she told me to do. And I'm going to talk about what I learned. Because I keep being reminded recently that some of the most meaningful leadership lessons don't come from business books, keynote stages, or podcasts with the word optimize in the title. Sometimes they come from somewhere you didn't expect. And I'm going to tell you, I did not expect this. Because just to be clear, I am not a Swiftie. I've purchased some albums. I know the hits. I can sing along well enough to embarrass my children in public, but I've never been to a concert. I don't own a friendship bracelet. I hesitate to even call myself a fan because Swifties may have thoughts about what that means, and I don't want to piss them off. So this episode is not a fandom episode. It is a leadership episode because what I watched genuinely inspired me. And I hope that as I talk about some of these things that I was inspired by Taylor, that it does the same for you. So just to be clear of what I was watching, it's called The End of an Era. It's a 6-part behind the scenes look at Taylor Swift's record-breaking Eras tour. And it follows her through different cities and shows and kind of pulls back the curtain on rehearsals and preparation. It lets us hear from people who helped make the whole thing happen. And I expected some spectacle, and I got that. But what I didn't expect, honestly, was a masterclass in leadership with heart. This was not a documentary about fame. It was about preparation, generosity, trust, creativity, and what it looks like to lead at the highest level without losing your humanity along the way. Because Taylor Swift built the largest tour in the history of the world. I mean, I don't know if that's like an official Guinness World thing, but I'm going to say the largest tour in the history of the world. She made the most money. She made all the money. She grabbed the most headline. They talk about it in the documentary. She literally changed the economies of cities and countries because of this tour. So she is undeniably a badass. Taylor Swift is a badass. But here is what I loved is she did all of that, but she did it without becoming harder, colder, or smaller, and she didn't require that of anybody else around her. So as I watched this, I said, she is also undeniably a softie. She is a badass softie, and that's why this matters. Because about halfway through the first episode, I started actually taking notes. I started writing things down that I was seeing and learning, and I did not want to forget. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. There's a few leadership lessons that really, first off, probably the reason I probably started crying is because they reminded me of who I wanted to be. I looked and I saw this incredibly successful person, and I said, oh, you can do it. You can do it at a level that I'm aspiring to and I can be inspired by. And so there were some things that stayed with me that I just want to talk about today. And they're not in any particular order, but I want to kind of walk through some of the lessons I learned. One of the lessons I learned, and I'm going to kind of give each of these a title, but the one of the lessons I was reminded of, I guess, was my problems are not your problems. Now, what I mean by that is one of the first things that struck me about Taylor in this, I mean, we are on a first name basis now, was how much she was carrying behind the scenes. The emotional weight, the physical exhaustion, the personal heartbreaks. They showed some amazing things, even illness. This was a massive undertaking that ultimately rested on her shoulders. She made it clear throughout the entire show that she couldn't have done it without her team. She gave them a lot of praise and honor. But the truth is, many people on that tour could have been replaced and the show would still go on. She could not. And that is a heavy thing to carry. And yet, when she stepped on stage, none of that became the audience's burden. Not because she's superhuman, but because she understands something many leaders forget. Your problems are not your team's problems, especially when you signed up for this. As a business owner, your problems are not your customers' problems. Leadership doesn't mean emotionally dumping downhill. It means emotional discipline, not pretending, not suppressing, but sometimes it's just knowing what needs to be processed privately so people can rely on you and they don't have to carry anything for you. And this really hit home for me in a real way just a few weeks ago. So I flew to Minneapolis to work with a multi-billion-dollar company, and they were flying in 20 of their top leaders for 2 full days of work. So this was, I mean, they paid me, but just to have everybody there was a very expensive endeavor. There was a lot at stake, and they wanted to get their messaging right. So we had 2 days to do it. Well, mid-flight on my way up there, there was a man sitting directly in front of me, and he had a heart attack right in front of me. I mean, just this chair, literally, I could reach up and touch his head. His wife was panicking. A cardiac nurse kept shouting his name to try to keep him conscious. And they were leaning him back into my seat, and they were asking me to hold wet cloths because they were trying to keep him, conscious through the whole thing. I mean, it was one of the scariest flights I've ever been on, to be very honest. And it's not because I was worried for myself, but I was just sitting there going, am I going to watch this person die right in front of me? And by the time we landed, nobody on the plane was sure, if this guy was going to make it. And I believe he did, because there was an ambulance there. They got on, they worked on him, and he made it to the ambulance. They got it off, and then they let us all off the airplane and just were like, hey, thanks for your patience. And so I get off the plane, and I'd already kind of had a later flight than I wanted because of some family commitment. So usually I try to get to my hotel early. I was getting there late. I got there about midnight. And when I got to my hotel, I was still shaken and I barely slept. Well, the next morning, I had to lead 2 full 8-hour days of high stakes work. And as people walked into the room one by one, they introduced themselves and they asked me the same question I get every time I travel. Hey, how are you? How was your flight? Well, I had a choice in that moment. I could tell them everything I had just been through, where I could say, oh, I didn't sleep well last night at all. I'm so exhausted. I still feel kind of stressed. I'm a bit anxious. I don't feel really good because I didn't sleep, and then the coffee isn't sitting well, and I'm exhausted and I'd have to sit here for 2 days and be with strangers and try to help make them money. Or I could really be in control and deliver the experience they paid for. So I said, well, I got to the hotel just fine. Not because I didn't want to be human or vulnerable, but because in that moment, my job was to show up as their guide. They didn't need to take care of me. They were already nervous about the work. There was a lot at stake that was going to happen. And my role in that moment was to help them feel safe. Now I processed this experience later with my husband and some friends, and even I actually ended up telling some of them later after the work was done. But in that room, I knew my role. They paid for an experience and I was going to deliver. They shouldn't have to be caring for me in that moment or worrying about how I was going to do. It was my job to care for them. They were already feeling nervous, and it was my job to help them feel safe. Taylor explained this in the documentary by saying that when she is on stage, her responsibility is to give people the best night of their lives, regardless of what she is carrying personally. She reminded me that leadership isn't about being unfeeling. It's about knowing when to be strong, when to be vulnerable, and who you're responsible for in each of those moments. Don't show up as a victim. Show up as a guide. Another thing that I learned in this documentary, or was reminded of, is preparation equals freedom. There's a moment in this series where you realize just how insanely prepared Taylor is for this tour. She started training 6 months ahead of time, running on a treadmill to the exact tempo of every song in the show, rehearsing the entire 3+ hour show over and over and over again. Not to be rigid, but to be free. Freedom on stage is built in rehearsal. So many leaders want flexibility without discipline, creativity without structure, joy without preparation. But what this series reminded me so clearly is that structure creates spaciousness. When I show up to work on marketing and messaging with a client, I know that I've put in the hours. I spent a decade on my education. I've spoken in front of thousands. I've worked with hundreds of companies. I continue to read, listen, study, and learn from the best minds around. Even now, I still prepare the night before. Like when I'm showing up to work with a client, I review what I'm going to say. I practice my opening. I revisit my notes for that specific client. And then I do it again the next morning. I take nothing for granted, even though I've spoken and taught on this topic hundreds of times over the past decade. This is in my blood. But why I do that is because when I show up and I'm in the room with those people, I'm not wrestling with the basics. Those come second nature. I can actually put my energy into creativity, whimsy, wisdom, and thinking on my feet and really leading a team. I don't think I'm ever going to rehearse on a treadmill for 8 hours. That's just not what I'm going to do. But Taylor reminded me that preparation is what makes freedom possible. One of the fun things that I was reminded of in this series is over-deliver so everybody wins. This tour was over 3 hours long. It didn't have to be. It didn't have to be. She'd never done a tour like this before. Nobody really had. It was over 3 hours long. She didn't aim for just enough. She went big on purpose. She made sure people at the very tops of the stadium, they could see and feel included. They had a different angle. It was a different experience for everybody. But what stayed with me even more was that what happened when the tour made more money than expected, when it actually over-delivered even for Taylor, she shared it. One of the most powerful moments that even got a bunch of social media play is she gave massive bonus checks. She gave handwritten notes, genuine gratitude, because when the tour won, because they went above and beyond, everybody won. That's leadership. I want to be the kind of leader who believes that when I win, especially financially, that the people who help make that win possible should win too, period. They put in the effort. They carried the weight. They showed up day after day. And based on the reaction of her team, this wasn't kind of just standard generosity. It was over the top, intentional, and deeply personal. If you call people to big things, you should reward them when those big things succeed. And the truth is, this isn't just about being a good human, which it is. That's bottom line what you should do. But several team members in the series said they had never experienced generosity like that from someone at the top, and it changed how they showed up every single night. When you go big and deliver on the promise, everybody should win, especially your team. The thing that probably made me cry the most, if I'm most honest again, was another thing that I learned that I want to say call the leadership principle of let people shine as themselves. This is what hit me the hardest, I would say. Because another constant theme throughout the series was belonging. Not just acceptance, but belonging. And what I mean by belonging, it was really about Taylor and her team honoring and celebrating everybody. She celebrated their difference, their uniqueness. You saw dancers of different sizes and ages and races and identities, and she wasn't threatened by their shine. One dancer even mentioned that fans knew the dancers' names. Now, that's rare. That doesn't happen by accident. It's because Taylor put the spotlight on other people. And honestly, it was people who had been overlooked by other people in the industry because they were different. She put the spotlight on them and celebrated them so much in a way that they got their own fans, and she was not threatened by that at all. And another example, there was a woman who was going through a battle with cancer and needed to take a break from the tour. And Taylor told her, she came to her and said, your place is still going to be here when you return. This person's pain and illness was not an inconvenience. She was seen and her healing journey was honored. And boy, was she celebrated when she came back. They held a place for her. So often, when it comes to leadership and organizations, our differences, our pain, our struggles, they feel like they are seen as things that get in the way of ambition for leaders. Because let's just be honest, they can slow us down. Uniformity creates precision and speed, but differences require nuance and attentiveness. You might even have to bend a few rules. For Taylor, at least what we were shown on the screen, is that the sacrifices away from family, the pain people was experiencing, they were honored with bonus checks. A struggling singer was given the space to heal. A male dancer was given the opportunity to shine in a role that was supposed to be exclusively for a woman. And it meant the world to every single one of them. People know when they're being tolerated because they're different. They also know when they're being honored and celebrated because of that difference, not in spite of it. One dancer said something that stuck with me. She talks about how Taylor never asked anyone to shrink or blend in, and instead made space for people to be exactly who they were. Celebration builds loyalty, and loyalty creates excellence. The people on that tour didn't just show up, they gave their best, and you could feel it. I want to be the kind of leader who celebrates people for exactly who and where they are in life, not so that they can shrink or relax, but so they can bring out the best versions of themselves and the best for the team. The last thing that really stuck with me in this whole thing is Taylor taught me, own your work and your story. Taylor used the success of her tour, the financial success, to buy back her catalog. She owns all of her music. She wanted to own her work, her voice, and her future. And that's not just a music industry move and a smart business move. That's leadership. Ownership creates clarity for people. And clarity creates courage. One of my favorite things to help clients do is to create something proprietary, like a framework or a book or a body of work that reflects their voice, a course they're putting out there. I've worked with so many clients who have these huge ideas, big things, and they've kind of given the urgency over to somebody else. They've allowed other people to use their ideas to build their kingdoms and their wealth. But the reality is, when they actually can take back control of that IP through a course or through a workshop or through a book, anything, it's not just about creative fulfillment for doing that, but it's about having ownership. Because when you have ownership, it really changes how you show up in the world. And Taylor has said that owning her work allows her to make decisions from a place of freedom instead of fear. That's what I want for all my clients. Taylor conquered the world and then took her money and bet on herself again. That's exactly what this podcast is for me. A decision to keep betting on my own voice. I want to keep showing up and sharing my voice with the world in a way that inspires and moves people and creates freedom for my family. And the way that I'm doing that is by helping other people do the same thing. That's my heart, and that's what I want to do with the work, the rest of my life, and the work that I'm going to do. Taylor made the most money. She had the biggest tour. She grabbed the most headlines. She changed economies. And yet she did it with preparation, generosity, trust, and humanity. I think part of the reason why I cried so often watching this docuseries, which is still just going to make me laugh every time I say it, is because Taylor showed me you can have both ambition and heart. You don't have to become colder to grow bigger. You don't have to shrink your humanity to scale your impact. Someone on her team reflected on the idea that the scale of the tour never came at the expense of kindness. I mean, if somebody ever said that about me, come on. That's what being a badass softie looks like. And so I would like to leave you with this. May you prepare more than anyone sees so that you can show up with freedom and joy when it matters most. May you go big without forgetting the people who helped you get there. May success never make you stingy with credit or gratitude or money. May you lead in a way that lets people be fully themselves, not tolerated, not managed, but seen and celebrated. And may you bet on your own voice and your own work so you can build something that reflects who you actually are. Because we believe you can be both ambitious and kind, fun and driven, powerful and deeply human. Your leadership can inspire, your success can have soul, and your ambition can make space for everyone. That's why you're a badass softie. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Follow and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. BadassSoftie.com is crafted by Fruitful Design and Strategy.